fellow musicians. I'm Bradley Sowash, jazz pianist and educator, and I'd like to welcome you to a new series in my improv tip of the month that I'm calling Style School. And this is the first one of the series of Style School, where we're going to look at the swing style, specifically swing comping strategies. By that I mean concepts and strategies and specific patterns to play rhythmic chords, mostly in the left hand, while the right hand improvises or doubles those chords. So I'm glad you're here with us. Let's listen to an example of swing comping, and then I'll explain what the heck I'm doing. I hope you can hear this bass that's being automatically generated along with the drums on my piano, because we want to play with an acknowledgement of a bass line, and sometimes we will play that bass line ourselves while comping or playing chords in the right hand. But right now I'm going to simulate a band here like this. So check out that left hand. Doing here is comping on one chord. Now I'm going to add that right hand. About that left hand. That's what we're talking about today. You might have some questions about the right hand, but save that for later. All right, let's do this. Alright, so my computer piano put on the auto accompaniment and the ending style, which cracks me up. So today we're talking about comping in the swing style. Let me start by defining comping. What the heck is comping? I was thinking today about my British, Irish, or Australian friends for who comping would mean sleeping overnight in the woods. But that's not what we're talking about here today. We are talking about comping as jazz parlance for accompaniment. So the jazz pianist's role in a small ensemble, such as a jazz trio with bass and drums, or in a large jazz ensemble, such as a big band, is to play the harmony in a rhythmic fashion that acknowledges the style at hand. By style I mean rock, funk, bossa nova. In this case we're talking about medium swing. And comping is what the pianist is in charge of, playing those chords. That kind of stuff. You can do it with both hands, as I just demonstrated. Or you can do it with one hand, especially if you're playing in a trio or by yourself, where your right hand is going to be in charge of the melody and your improvisation. So to go through this session, I'm going to talk about it in two parts and try to get out of here in like 30 minutes. The first thing is I'm just going to look at general strategies. And then we're going to look at some specific starter patterns, so you aren't just walking away with concepts. You've actually got something to copy here. We're going to first look at some strategies. Just general things to think about. And I'm going to use the metaphor here of two playmates, two little kids. Now, child psychologists tell us that there are stages in how children learn. And we're going to use that as a metaphor for how you could comp, just because I tend to have the brain that makes weird connections, and that's the connection I made. So the first one we're going to look at is something that 2+-year-olds do, which is when they play together, they do parallel play. And that means that they're playing independently. So, you know, one person's over there playing with blocks, and he's over here doing his thing, and the other one is over there doing maybe a different thing. So this one's playing with little dolls, this one is playing with blocks. They're just in the same room together, and they aren't necessarily acknowledging each other, but they're observing or aware of each other. And so for the pianist, the parallel to that is hands independent play. So just on a G minor chord, I'm using a G minor or G minor 7. What we're going to do is have that left hand play a pattern. I'm just working a pattern. And this is not part of the way we would necessarily play all the time in a swing comping style, because swing is vital because of its constant variety. But just for now, I'm gonna play a pattern. I'm just gonna use D bop, D bop, and I'll do that with the bass line here just to make it more fun. So here I go. I'm going D bop, D bop. So that's Johnny playing with his blocks, right? And over here, Sarah with her action figures. So, bop, bop, just keep going underneath while the top is free. So that would be an example of hands playing independently, and in this case I used a pattern in the left hand, so it's just doing its own thing, and on top of that comes the improvisation or whatever else is required of the pianist for the situation at hand. So that is one of a set of strategies you can use. We want to actually mix and match these. So we wouldn't want to do just that, but we want to know about that. Let's look at the second one. As kids grow a little bit older, and they're 3 to 4 years old, child psychologists tell us that they do something called associate play, which means they play together. So in this case, the left hand here is going to be much more working in coordination with the right hand. And let's just see how that happens. All right, we'll put on that groove. The rhythms line up. So I'm going to change the chords for variety, but same concept. That the hands are really sharing a rhythm. We're playing together. We're sharing a rhythm. Or whatever the right hand does, the left hand does. Again, this would not be a good approach to use exclusively. It's just one of the things that happens, especially on what we call shout choruses in a big band, or in your solo, when you really want to build that big thing that simulates the whole brass section going ba 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 da do da 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 da, and you're running through octaves. It's a great time to play that parallel rhythm in the chords. It's just huge sounding. You hear Oscar Peterson and a lot of pianists who have a sort of a flair or a showy style. They're going to pull that out at some point. So that's playing together, and that's a second strategy of 3 ways to comp between the left hand and the right hand. The last one is the metaphor of cooperative play, which is essentially taking turns. If kids get along, they're a little bit older, they're 4+ years, and they're like, hey, I got an idea, you do this, and then when you're done, I'll do it. So we're taking turns, we're going back and forth. And in music we might call this counterpoint, or just sharing the interest. So when the right hand is busy, the left hand is either absent or minimal, and when the left hand is playing a cool chordy rhythm, the right hand is minimalized or gone. So see if I can simulate that. Taking turns. Right hand, left hand. Right hand, left hand. Let's change up these chords. Left hand, right hand. Left hand. Notice they aren't always the same phrase lengths. So you don't always have to play like 2 measures of right hand, 2 measures of left hand. You just, sending out ideas, taking turns, interacting, really having a conversation between the hands, sharing the rhythmic interest, but the functions are different in that the right hand is covering melodic improvisation and the left hand is covering the harmony. Okay, so now I'm going to move on to some specific patterns. So you've got those 3 strategies in your head. And we know we're going to intermix those, but we're going to think about some starter patterns. Like you need something in your bucket or your bag to start with, right? Even though swing thrives on variety, how are we going to get that variety? So we're going to look at 3 patterns here. The first one, I just called it basic. Zip, do, bop. Now remember, this is a swing feel. So these eighth notes, though they're written here as 2 eighth notes that look the same as normal eighth notes, we know we're swinging, so that second eighth note's going to be a little late. Zoo, zoo, bop. Not 1, 2, and. It's da, dee, ga. And in swing music, a lot of times, that last note is short and slightly accented. We do that on chords. Zee, zoo, bop. Zee, zoo, bop. So let's try that with some improv over it. I want to mix these chords up. To stick to one pattern. All right, you get the idea. The right hand ideally is more free. I don't usually play patterns, so that's interesting. It gave me a challenge to try to stick to that for educational reasons. I'm going to show you how you can get a whole lot of mileage out of this simple pattern. It's a great pattern because it brings out the downbeat and then immediately suggests the swing, zoo, do, bop, and you've just got a groove right away. So some of you are familiar with my rhythm boards. If you're not, this represents 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and then there's sorry, let me put it up closer here. You can see it. And then there are 2 measures. So down underneath here is the same thing: 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. It looks like a cribbage board or something. And so that would be my basic pattern. The downbeat, that's the attack. We don't care about the length. And then the 2 and. 1, 2 and. 1, 2 and. Just repeating that first measure. Now the cool way to get a whole lot of mileage out of this and to practice your swing comping so that you have more intuition about letting it come out later organically. So in other words, we'll practice mechanically and then seed our hopper so it will come out organically later. What you could do is displace those. So we have 1, 2, and I deliberately wrote it out here with no measure line. So suppose this started on beat 2. That would change a lot, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, zap, do, bop, 1, 2, 3, and. Or we might move it even later in the measure. Put it on beat 3. 1, 2, let's see, 1, 2, zap, boo, dap, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, zap, do, bop. Okay, so that's called rhythmic displacement. We take an idea and we move it around. We start on different beats. Let me just demonstrate that for a minute. I'm going to start it on beat 1 first. Here we go. On beat 1. 1, 2, and. 1, 2, and. 2, 3, 4. So you get the idea. I'll do it on a chord progression so you can hear more. Starting on beat 1. Starting on beat 2. 1, 2, 3, up. So if you want to, kind of practice this, play this starting on different beats. And for an advanced tip, oh my gosh, you can even start on an and. So maintaining this pattern, you could actually start on the and of 1. Doom ba zoo da doom dong did it doom da boo da. So if you even move it around by the 8th note level, you have like, I don't know, 8 or 16 possibilities to just get this one rhythm playing all over the measure. And that's called rhythmic displacement. It's easiest to think about in terms of on and off beats rather than notating it. Because remember, notation was invented for Western music, which is all about 1, 2, 3, 4. And jazz is all about the in-between beats, the syncopations. So there's number 1 pattern. Get a lot of mileage out of it and play it in different places. Let's look at the second of 3 patterns. This one I call the Charleston. That's because James P. Johnson, the composer of the anthem of the 20s, the Charleston, everybody doing that thing. This was the basic rhythm of it, although it was really fast. So a little touch of that. That sound. But in a swing feel, it's going to feel more like bop. Now you notice it's just the same pattern we just looked at, except the first 2 notes are tied. This is a very played pattern. It's used all over the place. Let's listen to it a little bit. 1, 2, 3, 4, here we go. So I'm starting on the beat. Okay? Improvise. Also move this around. So in the same way that we did earlier, where this would be notated with just 2 marbles here representing beat 1 and then beat and of 2, well, you could just move that around. Let's start on beat 2. 1, 2, bop, 1, 2, stop. So you can move this around and play it on any part of the measure, and that's going to automatically create a lot more interest. Okay. The third one, actually it's four ideas I want to show you. Not 3. The third one I just call the entertainer. Most pianists have played that tune. If you remember, is right? It has that short, long, short, right after the 2 pickup notes. Right here. So I just call it this rhythm because it's a way to remember it. So don't say to your musician friends or your band director, hey, should I play that entertainer rhythm here, or do you want a Charleston comping? Well, that would make me happy because you paid attention. These are just my names for these rhythms. So they won't know what you're talking about. So za da da. Let's listen to that. Here we go. And za da da. Just as before, we're going to displace that. So if we looked at this on the rhythm board here, what do we have? 1 and on the first square, 1 and then an and of the second one. Zoo doo bop, 1 and a 1 and. But let's move that over. Again, let's put it on beat 2. Okay, 1 and 1, 2, ready, go. 1, 2 and 2 and You can see how when you move this, it gets a different character. We could even start this on the and of 1. Let's see. ga, one, ga, ga, da. That's pretty cool. So by rhythmically displacing these simple ideas, you uncover all kinds of patterns. One of the things I love to do in my teaching, and that I work a lot at, is that when you teach creativity, there's no right or wrong. So what I try to do is encapsulate rather complex concepts that are complex because they are so open to creativity and interpretation, and try to at least bottle them up in a way that we can pull them off the shelf and pour them out into our playing. That was an interesting metaphor. So while I've stopped here, I'll just remind you another thing here. Do all that stuff that you're supposed to do, like, like or follow my page and hit the subscribe buttons and share it with your other friends and all that. That helps me. I don't know if it helps me directly because, I have stuff going on all the time, but I love working with a larger community of creative musicians, and it's nice to just be part of that networking. So you're always supposed to say, so if you like this, subscribe and everything like that. So do whatever that is, maybe right now. Okay, so I'm going to do one more pattern here, and then I'll play this out a little bit. This last pattern is not so much a pattern as it is an idea. We've looked so far at strategies, and now we've been looking at patterns. In a minute, I'll put those together. The idea is simple. Know one. Don't play on beat one all the time. Now, the chord changes every measure. So we have, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. And that's what it says on the lead sheet. That's what it might say in the music. By the way, I'm playing the chords to a fall favorite. I'm not going to name it. By the way, you can't copyright chord progression, so I'm good to go as long as I don't play the melody or share the name. So even though the chords change on beat one, you can play them anywhere you like in the measure, as you saw with our displacements. 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 could just as well be 1, 2, 3, 4 chords late, 2, chords late, 3, 4, 1, 1. So let's hear that with some improvisation here. Let's get this going. 2, 3, 4. So in each case, I brought in the chord just a little bit later than 1, and it can be anywhere in the measure. And sometimes here's a dirty secret, you can leave a chord out sometimes. Or you can wait to the last possible second. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, a 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, last second. Okay, so you can put those chords wherever you like. So now let's just put those together. Combining the strategies, which we're playing independently with a pattern in one hand and the improv on top, which is what we were looking at there, we are now working with using that number 1 and also playing together where the hands match the same rhythm, and then also taking turns in the hands. Those wide open strategies and the patterns can spill through those, or they can react organically to what's going on in the right hand. If there's high rhythmic interest in the right hand, left hand doesn't have to do much. If the right hand is kind of pulled back a little bit, as it should, to simulate breathing, like a trumpet player would do or a singer would do to give it phrases rather than the pianist's habit of constant running notes, during those breath points, it's a good time for the left hand to be rhythmically interested. So we're simulating something like a guitar player playing chords and maybe a trumpet or saxophone player making up an improvised line. And they're going to listen to each other. This is why auto accompaniments of swing style are so difficult to do authentically, because musicians, when they improvise together, enjoy each other's playing and feed off each other and give each other ideas and then play contrasting ideas. It's actually a living thing rather than a set pattern. So I'm going to try to pull this all together here. I'll probably use the know one concept the least for the interesting reason. That is what is telling the bass simulation what chord to play. When I wait till halfway through the measure, it plays funny lines. And by the way, headphones or speakers would bring out that bass for you a little more if you are watching a replay of this, which will be available at my Bradley So Wash Music Facebook page. So I'm going to try to mix those and just play more the way I would, where that left hand is comping. And while you may enjoy the music and want to sit back and dig it, I would rather you actually analyze it a little bit and think about what I'm doing. But I do have the half-hour mark right now, so I'm just going to play for a few minutes for those of you who want to stick around. I have no more instruction to share, but I'm going to play it out because I love to just be a ham bone and play in front of my friends a little bit. So improvising with comping patterns using all the things we've discussed today. Let's have a listen. Trying to anticipate the drummer there. Anyway, thanks for dropping by today, spending a little bit of time with me. I'm Bradley So Wash, and until next time, enjoy your creative music making journey.